Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight Black Voices. I'm Angel Ito. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. Thanks for sharing a part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, looking at the role of race in the Kyle Rittenhouse prosecution and trial, breaking down the verdict and its impact on the criminal justice system. And as we head into Thanksgiving, the price of food is going up, and so is the demand at food banks. We check in with the Chicago Food Depository to see how they're preparing. Celebrating Emmett Till Mobley, we take a look back at the Chicago activist's impact as we mark what would have been her 100th birthday. Why a local artist is promoting vaccine awareness in Inglewood.
Connecting people to people and people to nature, which ends up being that mutual benefit.
And a team of conservationists offered the last word on how they say including diverse voices in environmentalist efforts lead to better natural spaces for all. First off tonight, the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is forcing the nation to revisit conversations about race and privilege in the criminal justice system, with many wondering if Rittenhouse would have received the same treatment if he were Black. Now, Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges on Friday. Let's take a look back at that moment.
The first count of the information, Joseph Rosenbaum. We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Now, Rittenhouse faced multiple charges for shooting 3 men and killing 2 of them during protests in Kenosha last year over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Some legal analysts and protesters pushing for a conviction accused the judge of favoring the defense, along with questioning the fairness of nearly an all-white jury. Now, that jury apparently agreed with Rittenhouse supporters that the teen acted in self-defense. Joining us now with more are defense attorney Tony Thedford and Xavier Pope, lawyer, legal and culture contributor for ESPN Las Vegas and host of Suit Up. First, I want to just hear from both of you, your reactions on the verdict. Xavier, let's start with you.
I'm not surprised. I think none of us are surprised. That doesn't mean we're not tired. My reaction is this is a landmark case in our country, which basically means that if you're African-American, you can be shot by police. Those police will not be held accountable. And if there are protests of the injustice that the police have presented, then white supremacist Proud Boys can come and use the protesters that are either Black or sympathetic to that cause as target practice. And then they could even be offered an internship and have a biased judge in their favor. That's what it does here. This is a terrible outcome. I do believe, though, the prosecution itself did not put on the most cohesive case over the course of doing so. It had to clean it up on close, but there was a judge that practically obstructed justice, and he was basically had an uphill battle to get this case through. We're not shocked, but we tired.
Tony, what about you? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are similar, but a bit different. I am not shocked by the result, at least as it relates to the murder charges. I did think that this jury, having taken that long to deliberate, were attempting to come up with some compromise as to the less important charge, or the less severe charges rather. And I thought they would come back with something on the reckless counts. I really did. I am shocked that it took them 4 days to acquit on all 5 counts. That's not typically the way. My belief was that if they were going to acquit Mr. Rittenhouse, that would have been done probably within the first 48 hours of their first 2 days of deliberation. And now so I'm shocked because of that. Yes.
Yes. No. And so I just wanted to note that the defense argued self-defense. The prosecution argued that Rittenhouse was the aggressor. Now, Tony, as a defense attorney, why do you think that the defense won the case?
They won the case because they had enough information from the video that they were able to argue that this was self-defense, and they cleaned it up by putting up Mr. Rittenhouse. I know that there's been a lot of scrutiny of his testimony and a lot of criticism, particularly of what people deem to be crocodile tears. Regardless of that fact, he needed to testify and acquit himself well in order to be acquitted. And based on this result, he did.
Now, Xavier, a lot of people say that race has nothing to do with this trial. What are your thoughts on that?
Jacob Blake is paralyzed at this moment. This whole trial had everything to do with Kyle Rittenhouse going and feeling he needed to police a certain space because of rioters or looters or those that were, frankly, like African American, and felt he needed to go there. Now, the fact that he was a vigilante EMT and ran up against someone who didn't happen to be Black doesn't necessarily mean this was not a racialized situation. I think that otherwise this wouldn't be as big as it was. We've made this protest, I like to say this, protests with guns aren't protests. That's war. And I think that the jury had a responsibility to say, do we want protests with guns, or we want protests to be able to respect people's rights? And I think that the jury made a misstep in saying it that way.
And speaking of the jury, they were made up of 7 women and 5 men, and all of them were white except 1 person of color. Xavier, in your legal opinion, what role did you think that the jury's demographics play into the trial?
Well, great question. I think it played in terms of defense. I think the defense was actually really weak. He went after the prosecutor, made scurrilous comments about the prosecutor during his close, and talked about the mob. And basically, his goal was to make the people that were there the aggressors, not just the 2 people that were shot. And so I believe that was enforced upon the jury and played on maybe biases in terms of what they viewed the situation was and how safe their community was after the shooting of Jacob Blake, and whether the protesters that were there should even have the right to be there, and them leaning into the fact that someone who, quote unquote, was a son of Kenosha had the right to go there and be there with the AR-15 and do whatever you want with it.
Now, Tony, do you think that race is a factor here?
Absolutely. This case, the victims in the case, as well as the defendant in the case, were all white. So it's a unique case regarding race, but as Xavier indicated, this was based on the shooting of Jacob Blake. That is the genesis point of the protest that led to this moment. I think in particular, I think no one will debate that when a young man is walking up and down the street during a protest with the AR-15 and not being addressed at all by law enforcement, stopped, questioned, in fact, offered water and support and thanks for his participation there without any vetting whatsoever, other than the fact of his skin color, I think clearly makes this about race. It's easy to argue that if he were a man of color, if he were a Black man, he certainly would not have been in that position. So yes, it's about race.
Absolutely, yes. So I want to jump ahead here. We're running out of time. We have our 6th question here. Looking at the judge in the case, he kind of seemed to give a bit of praise to the jury and thanked them. Here's a part of that.
Without commenting on your the verdicts themselves, just in terms of your the attentiveness and the cooperation that you gave to us, this justifies the confidence that the founders of our country placed in you.
Now, just quick reactions here. We're running out of time, but what are you all's thoughts to the judge's remarks here?
judge has been biased the entire time, from not allowing Kyle Rittenhouse to go back to jail after not disclosing his address, to interrupting him on the witness stand, to his behavior throughout the entire trial, commenting on journalists. This judge has shown his bias and showed this has been about him this entire time. It's a disgrace to the bar and the bench.
And Tony, we've got about 10 seconds left. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think that the judge's comments and leave it are pretty standard. They always thank juries. However, I do agree with Mr. Pope's comments regarding the judge's behavior throughout the trial. And unfortunately, because there was a not guilty verdict, none of those issues will be addressed by a court of appeals as to how that might have influenced the outcome of this case. Because again, when you're found not guilty in this country, there's double jeopardy. There's no double jeopardy, and he will not be tried or addressed again.
Thank you both so much. Our thanks to Xavier Pope and attorney Tony Tedford.
Thank you for having me.
Now, this November 23rd marks what would have been the 100th birthday of Mamie Till Mobley, the mother of Emmett Till. Now, Till, a 14-year-old boy from Chicago, was abducted and brutally murdered in 1955 after he was accused of flirting with a white cashier while visiting family in Mississippi. Now, Mamie Till Mobley insisted her son's funeral in Chicago be open casket, saying, quote, "I wanted the world to see what they did to my baby." She reflected on that decision in a 1986 interview that aired on Chicago Tonight in 2003. The interview was produced by then Chicago Tonight reporter Rich Samuels back while he was reporting for NBC5.
I remember when they began to unload the body, I looked and I saw the biggest box I'd ever seen in my life. And I realized that that box had my baby's body in it. And I was just overwhelmed with grief. It was a first, you know. The news media did not publish pictures of that nature because it was just something too horrible for the public to see. But if the world had not seen what had happened, I mean, the world needed this shock. They needed it. And when these pictures of Emmett hit the newsstands and people were really able to see what had happened to a youngster simply because of hate and race discrimination, I think it really let us see the ugly monster that race hatred is.
Now, after her son's murder, Till Mobley became a teacher and activist, traveling the country to educate people about what happened to her son. She died in 2003 at 81 years old. Up next, how local food banks are preparing for the holidays. Thanksgiving is just a few days away, and this year's dinner celebration is expected to be one of the most expensive holidays ever. Now, that's largely due to inflation and supply chain issues driving up prices. And as the cost of food rises, the need is also increasing. According to data from the Greater Chicago Food Depository, about 14% of Chicagoans experience food insecurity. Black and Latino households are at least twice as likely to be food insecure compared to white households. And data from Feeding America shows 24% of Black individuals were food insecure in 2020. Joining us now with more are Monica Moss of the Greater Chicago Food Depository and Jamil Wright, manager of Amman Food and Wellness Center in West Englewood. Thank you both so much for joining us. Monica, let's start with you. The pandemic has obviously exacerbated food insecurity and disparities. What type of demand is the depository experiencing, especially as we head into the holiday season?
Well, thanks so much for this time to talk about food insecurity. And I would say that the demand that we are experiencing is unprecedented. In the 40-year plus history of the Food Depository, we have never seen numbers like we have experienced. In just the past year, we've given over the equivalency of 97 million meals to households that are experiencing hunger and food insecurity in the Chicago area. So what I would say is that we are experiencing, even pre-pandemic, we knew that there was an issue with food security issues, but we are now seeing food insecurity at levels that are at least twice that of which we experienced before the pandemic. The need continues, and we are doing everything in our power to respond to everyone who is in need of food in Chicago.
And now, Jamal, I know that your food pantry is relatively new. It just opened this summer. What are you all seeing at your food bank? Are more folks showing up, or what has just the overall experience been like thus far?
Well, initially, before people obviously didn't know we were here, the numbers were slow, but it trickled in, and now we're seeing an increase every week. We're seeing more and more people. We're open 3 times a week. We're now considering the possibility of needing to go for a 4th time because the need is definitely presented.
Mr. Wright, how are you all preparing for the holidays?
Well, tomorrow we're having a turkey distribution. We're having turkey baskets that we're giving to, we're going to be serving, our organization is going to do about 700 turkeys for the Thanksgiving holiday. Here tomorrow, we're going to be doing about 125. And so we didn't have any problem getting people to come and sign up for those.
That's definitely great news to hear. Now, Monica, switching back over to you, the pandemic and rising food costs can also be difficult for food banks. So how have you all been dealing with those challenges?
Yes, you're right. We have had such disruptions with supply chain and with people. We're all feeling the pinch of the rising food costs. But the Food Depository is doing everything to make sure that we are still purchasing so that we can get food out into the community. We're making sure that we're buying enough food to serve all of the people who are in through our 700 plus pantry partners, our shelters, and the different ways that we provide meals in the community. So we are just making sure that we purchase that food so we can get it out into community.
Absolutely. And Mr. Wright, same for you. Are you all experiencing any challenges due to rising food costs or anything else? What have donations been looking like?
Well, thanks to the Greater Chicago Food Depository, we've been able to get off to a good running start. And as people are finding out about us, we've been able to get even, more and more donations are coming. We opened up in June. So every month, fortunately, we've been seeing more and more people wanting to contribute. But as the numbers increase, the numbers are increasing far faster than the donations are coming.
Absolutely. And now, Monica, I want to ask, stocking pantries with culturally appropriate food is also important to some. How is the depository addressing that specific need?
It's a great question because it's one of our top priorities. We want to make sure that when people get food in the community, we want to make sure it's food that they want, that food is culturally relevant. And so we're making sure that we, depending on the communities that we're serving, we're getting food that is something that people really want. That's important, that not only do we want to get nutritious food to people, but delicious food as well. So that's a big priority. We're making sure that we get sweet potatoes and greens out this Thanksgiving. And I just want to give a shout out to all of our pantry partners like Jamila with Iman, because they are our real heroes. They're the people who are out there every day, and they let us know what the needs of the community are. So when we hear that people need avocados or cilantro or sweet potatoes or collard greens, we want to make sure that we get that food out. And that's a big priority at this point.
Absolutely. You want to have diverse options in what you are providing to. Yes, absolutely. And so then just my last question, thinking about the best way that people can support you all this holiday season. Mr. Wright, let's start with you. What can folks do to help your food bank?
Well, first of all, making donations, cash donations are the best because they give us the opportunity to meet the needs of the people, which sometimes things change. We have an educational program that we're letting people know about things like cilantro and avocados, which is not popular in our neighborhood till recently. So mainly the cash donations coming in with non-perishable. We can even take perishable foods now because we have refrigeration, but just supporting in whatever way they can.
Absolutely, and we're running out of time here, but Monica, I really want to jump to you quickly as well. If there are any quick tidbits that you can share for how folks can involve themselves with the Greater Chicago Food Depository.
At the Food Depository, we are always open to volunteers to pack boxes and get that food out. We also are always open to cash donations or donations of time, and money is always important to buy food, but also lift your voices, raise awareness about food insecurity and hunger in our community. And that's the way we can get the word out together and make Chicago a greater Chicago.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much. Our thanks to Monica Moss and Jamil Wright for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Now, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but in this case, some community members hope a picture will save a life. In this story, I take you to Inglewood, where a mural is working to bring awareness to the COVID-19 vaccine. On 63rd and Halsted, an Inglewood family stands with an important message that reads, "Protect yourself and the people you love." Commissioned by Amplifier, a nonprofit committed to highlighting community issues through art and media, Chicago artist Brandon Breaux created a digital mural that was printed and hung to promote vaccine awareness. Now, Breaux says in a media-driven world where there is a lot of false information, he wanted to use his art to educate.
We use art as a mechanism to cut through the noise, and art has a history, very good track record of being able to do so. So we beautify our communities. We create this work in the hopes that it leaves people informed and uplifts them at the same time.
This uplifting image displays the Evans family, Father Dale, Mother Charlie, and their 18-year-old son John. They're founders of the new generation Harvest Church.
We are here to try to help in that aspect and say, listen, we might not know each other by name, but we can feel each other's pain. We go through something, we go through the same thing.
They hope their advocacy will not only stretch beyond the homes of their neighbors, but within their family as well, like with their eldest son who wasn't featured in the mural.
Our grandchildren are vaccinated. Everybody is vaccinated.
Yeah.
My son is not vaccinated. I hope he sees this.
While this physical mural might be temporary, Breaux says he hopes that the message behind it lives forever.
We have the responsibility to put our best foot forward and showing up and having that story so that the future can have an example of what this looks like.
Again, you can see that mural at the corner of 63rd and Halsted. Now, the colors of nature are boundless, but the American conservationist movement has historically been mostly white. Black people are almost 3 times more likely than white people to live in, quote, nature-deprived areas. Here, the Illinois Nature Conservancy Community Outreach Team gives the last word on how they say bringing diverse perspectives to conservationism can bring about a natural change.
My name is Lucy Gomez Feliciano. I'm the Community Stewardship Program Manager at the Chicago Park District, shared position with the Nature Conservancy.
My name is Deborah Williams. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist for the Indian Boundary Prairies.
And my name is Forrest Cortez. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Nature Conservancy in Illinois. Our goal is to really foster the connection between people and nature.
Nature's all around us, whether it's the tree in front of our house, whether it's the park or the forest preserve. It is, to me, medicine to our spirit, our souls, our bodies. As a team, we're pretty diverse. So Deborah and I don't have ecology background, right? We didn't study this. We come from more deeper roots in community, working with people in different institutions.
Here, my role is building a bridge between the people and nature, and utilizing my mantra of connecting people to people and people to nature. I think that in what we do and what I do specifically is to orient it so that the persons who have been very insular somewhat are getting to know the people and getting that bridge built so that there's some mutuality once again in benefit and knowledge.
I think that the expertise and the lived experiences of our Black and Brown communities has not always been represented in a lot of the mainstream conservation and environmental work that happens. I believe it's like almost impossible for us to succeed fighting things like climate change, impossible for us to succeed improving the health of our communities if we don't understand where people's connections already are and the roots that they already have with these places.
I got really keenly interested at my previous job that specifically looked at monarchs and migration. And as I learned about monarchs and their life cycle, and then going from just really being all concerned about themselves and their growth to being a pollinator that impacted others, it really brought me in not just to the insect, but to the magnitude of that message. And also, when I would share it with others, it was literally a moment that I couldn't create. It was more supernatural than natural. People make it personal, because even when I talk to kids and say, and they think about where they are in their life process, teenagers, it's like, so are you at the caterpillar place or are you flying now? You know, so acknowledging the fact that everything and everybody has a purpose, and then orienting it in such a way where we see the people part and the nature part, they remember. And I didn't think about it like that. So there's that connecting people to people and people to nature, which ends up being that mutual benefit.
By bringing diverse expertise like our team represents and the communities we work with to the table, we're really allowing that interchange to happen, getting folks together to have those conversations and to share their expertise in a way that will benefit everyone around the table.
Now we'll hear more from the Nature Conservancy team in a future Chicago Tonight Latino Voices episode. And that's our show for this weekend. For all of us here at Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito. Thank you for sharing a part of your weekend with us. Good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm pleased to give back to the community through numerous charitable initiatives.